Have you ever looked at the man you'd shared more than 50 years with? The one who still opened doors for you and called you my girl in front of the grandkids, and suddenly realized there was a whole corner of his heart you were never invited into? A corner where someone else's name lived quietly for decades while you were busy believing you were the only love of his life? My name is Margaret Rose Delaney. I'm 78 years old. I still hang my wash on the same clothesline behind the little brick house on Abbott Road in South Buffalo. And for the past 18 months, I have carried the weight of a 12-page letter my husband Patrick wrote the week before he passed. A letter he tucked inside the lining of the honeymoon suitcase we bought in 1959. A letter that begins with the words, "Mags, if you're reading this, I'm gone and I'm finally free of the secret I carried every day we were married." I found it the morning after we said goodbye to him, and what he told me didn't just hurt my heart, it quietly changed every memory I thought belonged only to us. Let me take you all the way back, because to understand how completely a person can keep something hidden, you have to know what South Buffalo was like when we were young. It was the kind of neighborhood where doors stayed unlocked, and everybody knew when you were getting a new couch before it even came off the truck. Patrick Delaney lived 3 streets over on Hopkins Road. Red hair that never quite behaved, green eyes that crinkled when he smiled, and a gentle way of listening that made you feel safe. We started going steady in 1955 when we were 15. He'd wait for me after Tuesday night novenas, walk me home past the railroad tracks, and we'd talk about the future like it was already ours. Everyone said we were the sweetest couple they ever seen. Even then, they were only seeing part of the picture. The summer of 1958 was supposed to be our last carefree season before wedding bells. Patrick was 20, working at the Chevrolet plant, saving every paycheck for the ring he planned to give me the following June. What I didn't know was that for a few months that spring, he had also been seeing a girl who worked the soda counter downtown, Eileen O'Connor, 19 years old, auburn curls and a laugh that turned heads. They had dated quietly, nothing serious at first, Patrick wrote later, until one evening things changed and Eileen realized she was in a situation a girl from our neighborhood simply could not face at home. She decided the kindest thing for everyone was to leave Buffalo and start fresh far away. Patrick gave her every penny he'd saved, $300, to help her on her way. She took a bus west, and he never expected to hear from her again. 3 weeks later, he proposed to me in my parents' front parlor. Voice shaking, eyes shining, and I said yes without a single doubt. We married on June 27, 1959, in Our Lady of Victory Basilica. 400 people, 20-foot train, reception at the Knights of Columbus, honeymoon in Niagara Falls. Exactly as we'd dreamed. Patrick kissed me like he was his whole world, and for 52 years he lived that promise every single day. He worked double shifts when money was tight, danced with me in the kitchen every New Year's Eve, sent roses on the anniversary of our first date without fail, pruned the lilacs every spring even when his hands weren't steady anymore. I thought we were the luckiest couple alive. I thought we had no secrets. I was wrong. The quiet started in the late 90s. Patrick would sit on the back porch long after supper, staring at the alley like he was waiting for someone who never came. I blamed the mill closing, the empty nest, the way the neighborhood changed. I never guessed the real reason. In 1998, a letter arrived in handwriting I didn't recognize. Patrick took it to the garage, read it alone, and came back with red eyes. Then he wrote back, and kept writing back. For 26 years, he carried on a correspondence I knew nothing about. First letters, then emails, then phone calls taken in the garage with the door closed. He sent birthday cards with money tucked inside, Christmas packages, graduation gifts. He kept photographs in a lockbox behind the water heater. Pictures of a red-haired man and 3 little girls who looked exactly like our own grandchildren. That man's name is Michael. He is Patrick's son, born to Eileen after she left Buffalo, raised by a kind couple in Rochester. When Michael was grown, he searched for the father listed on his original papers and found Patrick. They began writing, then talking, then meeting. For the rest of his life, Patrick lived for two families, the one everyone saw on Abbott Road and the one only he knew existed 3 hours away. 17 times Patrick drove to Rochester when I thought he was at the VA or fishing with the boys or visiting cousins. 17 times he hugged his son, took him to dinner, sat in parking lots talking until the streetlights came on, then came home and kissed me goodnight like any ordinary Tuesday. I never suspected a thing. In spring 2023, Patrick started slowing down. One day he was raking the lawn, the next he could barely finish supper. The doctor said his body was simply worn out after a long, hard-working life, and it was time to rest. Patrick wanted to spend whatever time he had left at home, surrounded by family. We turned the dining room into a comfortable bedroom, brought in a recliner and his favorite quilt. The kids came home, the grandkids filled the house with laughter and crayons. Patrick was peaceful, almost joyful the last weeks. He kept saying he'd made his peace with everyone he ever needed to. I thought he meant the little things, forgetting anniversaries when the kids were small, being stubborn about money. I had no idea. The night he passed, June 14th, 2024, the whole family was there. He told the children he was proud, told the grandkids to be good, then turned to me and said, clear as day, Megs, you were the best thing that ever happened to me. Thank you for the life. He smiled, that crooked smile I'd loved since we were teenagers, closed his eyes, and slipped away. I thought that was the hardest moment I'd ever face. It wasn't. The morning after we laid him to rest, the house was finally quiet. I decided to tidy the bedroom closet. Grief makes you need something to keep your hands busy. That's when I pulled down the old brown Samsonite from the top shelf, the one we took to Ireland in '69. It felt heavier than it should. I opened it on the bed and found a thick manila envelope sewn into the lining with my own blue embroidery thread from 1961. On the front, in Patrick's handwriting, for Margaret Rose, only if I go first. I sat on the carpet and read 12 pages that changed everything. Page by page, he told me about Eileen, the money he gave her to start over, the son he never expected to meet, the letters that began in 1998, the meetings, the birthdays, the love he carried in secret for 26 years, the guilt he felt every day of our marriage, and the joy that finally healed him when he got to know Michael and his granddaughters. On the last page, he begged me to forgive him if I could, and to reach out to Michael so the two families he loved could finally know each other. I read it over and over, trying to make sense of a life I thought I knew completely. A week later, a package arrived. No return address. Inside were photographs tied with twine. Patrick and a red-haired man in his 50s, standing under our lilacs, arms around each other, both crying and laughing. More pictures. Patrick pushing Michael's daughters on the swings. Patrick at their school plays. Patrick beaming at a birthday party with a cake that read, "Happy 50th, Dad." At the bottom was Patrick's old prayer book from Korea, with a note tucked inside. Mags, if you can find it in your heart to let Michael in, you'll see the best parts of me still living. If you can't, I understand. I loved you both. I still haven't called him. Some nights I sit on the porch with Patrick's old sweater across my lap and talk to him like he's still beside me. I tell him I'm hurt.
I tell him I'm proud he finally became the father he was afraid to be when he was 20. I tell him I'm still learning how to live in a house where every picture now has someone new standing just out of frame.
Michael calls every Sunday. He never pushes, just says, "I'm here when you're ready, Margaret. Dad said you have the biggest heart he ever knew." Last week, he left a message that made me smile through tears. His oldest granddaughter is getting married next June, and they'd like to plant a small lilac bush from our yard in their new home, if that's all right. He said, "Dad always told me the lilacs on Abbott Road were his favorite place in the world. We'd be honored to keep a little piece of both of you growing with us." Last night, I walked out to the lilacs at twilight. They're the same bushes Patrick planted the year we bought the house, the ones he pruned every spring, even when his hands weren't steady. I thought about Eileen, who never got to see her son grow tall. I thought about Michael, who grew up wondering about the father he finally found. I thought about our own children, who still don't know why their mother sometimes sits on the porch a little longer these days. And for the first time in 18 months, something warmer than hurt moved inside me. Next June, a young woman will promise forever under a trellis somewhere, and a lilac bush from our yard will be putting down roots in new soil, and the grandmother she's never met will either be there holding her hand or will still be on Abbott Road trying to decide if love can stretch far enough to cover two families that started with one scared 20-year-old boy. I honestly don't know which one I'll be when the day comes. So I'm asking you, because I still don't have the answer. When the man you loved for more than half a century dies happy because he finally got to know the son he never told you about, and that son shows up with open arms and photographs of a whole other life you were never part of, do you open the door, or do you keep it closed and let two families stay strangers forever? Because June is coming. The lilacs are already budding. And for the first time since I read that letter, I'm starting to believe maybe a heart that's been surprised by the truth can still grow wide enough to hold 3. Leave your story below. Some secrets don't end when the person is gone. They just wait quietly until you're ready to decide what love is worth. I read every comment. Maybe one of you can tell me what to do when the lilacs bloom and the doorbell finally rings.